The Moretti mansion was supposed to be the safest place in the city. Armed guards at every gate, cameras covering every hallway. No one entered without the Mafia boss's permission. But danger didn't come from outside. It came from inside the nursery. It began with a noise the maid, Rosa, had never heard before. A soft whimper, almost a choke, coming from the crib long after the baby should have been asleep. When she opened the door, she froze. The baby's blanket was on the floor. The rocking horse was overturned, and standing over the crib was the one woman Rosa never imagined would be there at this hour. The Mafia boss's wife. Her hands weren't gentle. Her eyes weren't warm. They were cold, flat, like she wasn't looking at the baby, but at something she hated. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" Rosa's voice cracked. The woman didn't answer. She tightened her grip on the baby's tiny wrist. Rosa rushed forward. "Stop, please stop, he'll hear!" But the wife only smiled. A slow, chilling smile that didn't belong in a nursery. "No, he won't," she whispered. "Not tonight." Rosa grabbed her arm, desperate, shaking. And for the first time, the baby's scream cut through the hallway. A scream that would wake the entire mansion. A scream that would expose what the Mafia boss was never supposed to find out. And when he finally opened that nursery door, when he saw what his wife had done, nothing in the Moretti Empire would ever be the same again. Stay with me until the end, because what the Mafia boss discovered in that nursery will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and love. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's get started. To understand how it all unraveled, we need to go back 3 hours earlier. Vincent Moretti sat behind his massive oak desk, reviewing territorial maps spread across the polished surface. The meeting had run longer than expected. Territory disputes with the Castellano family demanded his full attention. Lives hung in the balance when boundaries were crossed in their world. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Isabella. "Working late again tonight. Baby is sleeping. Don't disturb us when you get home." Vincent smiled slightly. Isabella had been protective of their son Marco since the day he was born 6 months ago. The baby represented everything Vincent had built his empire to protect. A future, a legacy, something pure in a world stained with blood and betrayal. He had no idea that at that very moment, his wife was staring down at their child with something far from maternal love. He had no idea that Rosa was watching from the hallway, her heart pounding as she witnessed something that would haunt her forever. Rosa Martinez had worked for the Moretti family for 8 years. She'd seen violence. She'd witnessed interrogations in the basement. She'd cleaned blood from marble floors, without asking questions. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw that night in the nursery. Isabella Moretti stood perfectly still beside the crib, her designer dress pristine, her makeup flawless. But her hands were shaking with barely controlled rage as she looked down at the sleeping infant. 6 months, Isabella whispered to herself. 6 months of pretending this thing matters to me. Rosa pressed herself against the wall outside the nursery, her breathing shallow. She'd come upstairs to check on the baby as she did every night before leaving. It was routine, safe, until tonight. "All those years of trying," Isabella continued, her voice growing colder. "All those doctors, all those treatments. And when I finally get pregnant, when I finally give him what he wants, he still looks at me like I'm not enough." The baby stirred in his sleep, tiny fists clenching and unclenching. Isabella's jaw tightened. "He thinks you're perfect. His precious heir, his future. But you're just another burden, aren't you? Another mouth to feed. Another reason for him to ignore me completely." Rosa's blood ran cold. She'd noticed changes in Isabella over the past few months. The way she avoided holding the baby. How she'd leave the room when Vincent played with Marco. The distant look in her eyes during family dinners. But this was something else entirely. Isabella reached down toward the crib, her movements deliberate and calculated. That's when Rosa stepped into the doorway, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Isabella's hand froze inches from the baby's face. Slowly, she turned toward Rosa, and the maid saw something in her employer's eyes that made her stomach drop. This wasn't the woman she'd known for years. This wasn't the elegant, composed wife of Vincent Moretti. This was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Rosa. Isabella's voice was calm, almost pleasant. I thought you'd gone home already. I was just checking on the baby before I left, Rosa stammered. Like always. Isabella nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense. Of course you were. You care about him, don't you? More than his own mother does. The admission hung between them like a confession. Rosa felt her heart hammering against her ribs. She knew she should leave, should pretend she hadn't heard anything, should walk away and let whatever was happening here remain a secret. But the baby, the innocent child who had no idea his life hung in the balance. Ma'am, maybe you should get some rest, Rosa said carefully. You seem tired. Isabella laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Tired? Yes, I suppose that's one way to put it. She moved closer to the crib again, and Rosa saw her hands curl into fists. Do you know what it's like, Rosa? To carry a child for 9 months? To go through labor? To sacrifice your body, your time, your entire existence, and then watch your husband love that child more than he's ever loved you? Rosa didn't answer, couldn't answer, because she could see where this was heading, and every instinct screamed at her to stop it. He used to look at me the way he looks at Marco now, Isabella continued, her voice growing sharper. With wonder, with love, with purpose. Now I'm just the vessel that delivered his precious heir. The baby began to fuss, soft whimpers echoing in the nursery. Isabella's expression darkened further. Even now, you won't be quiet, will you? She hissed at the crib, always demanding attention, always taking what should be mine. That's when Rosa saw Isabella's hand move toward the baby's face, and something inside her snapped. Every survival instinct told her to stay silent, to protect herself, to avoid crossing the wife of the most dangerous man in the city. But she couldn't. Not when an innocent life was at stake. Ma'am, please! Rosa stepped forward, her voice stronger now. This isn't what you want to do. Isabella turned to face her fully, and Rosa saw something that chilled her to the bone. The woman's eyes were completely cold, calculating, as if she was weighing whether Rosa's life was worth preserving. You know what I find interesting, Rosa? Isabella said conversationally. You've worked here for 8 years. You've seen things, heard things, and you've never once betrayed this family's trust. Rosa nodded slowly, unsure where this was leading. But tonight, Isabella continued, you're about to see something that will test that loyalty in ways you've never imagined. The words hit Rosa like a physical blow. She understood now. Isabella wasn't just having a moment of weakness or postpartum depression. This was planned, calculated, and Rosa had walked straight into the middle of it. You're going to hurt him? Rosa whispered, the reality crashing over her like ice water. Isabella's smile widened. Hurt is such a crude word, don't you think? I prefer to think of it as solving a problem. Vincent's attention problem, our marriage problem, my problem. Rosa's mind raced. The mansion was massive. Vincent's office was 3 floors down. The security guards were stationed outside, not inside the family quarters. No one would hear if she screamed. No one would come if she called for help. She was alone with a woman who had clearly lost all connection to reality. Think about what you're saying, Rosa pleaded, taking another careful step forward. This is your son, your flesh and blood. My burden, Isabella corrected sharply. My replacement in Vincent's heart. Do you know he hasn't touched me since Marco was born? Hasn't looked at me the way a husband should look at his wife? It's all about the baby now, the precious heir, the future of the Moretti name. The baby's whimpering grew louder, as if sensing the tension in the room. Isabella's face twisted with disgust at the sound. Even now, demanding attention, she hissed. Always crying, always needing something. Well, tonight the crying stops. That's when Rosa saw it. The small pillow in Isabella's other hand, partially hidden behind her back. The realization hit her like a sledgehammer. This wasn't going to be violent. It was going to look like an accident. Sudden infant death syndrome. A tragedy that would bring Vincent and Isabella together in their grief. "You can't," Rosa breathed, her voice barely audible. "The cameras. Vincent will see." Isabella's laugh was sharp and bitter. "The cameras in the nursery have been malfunctioning for weeks. Such a shame. Vincent keeps meaning to have them fixed, but he's been so busy with business. And you, Rosa, you'll tell him how devastated I was to find our baby had simply stopped breathing in his sleep." The cold calculation in Isabella's voice made Rosa's blood freeze. This woman had thought of everything, every detail, every possible question, every way to make herself look like a grieving mother instead of a killer. "I won't do it," Rosa said, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. "I won't lie for you. I won't help you murder an innocent child." Isabella's expression shifted, the mask of civility finally dropping completely. What remained was pure venom. "You'll do exactly what I tell you to do," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Because if you don't, I'll tell Vincent you were stealing from us, that you were planning to sell information about our family to our enemies, that you were the one who hurt the baby when I caught you." Rosa felt the walls closing in around her. Isabella was right. Who would Vincent believe? His wife? The mother of his child? Or a maid with no family, no connections, no power? In Vincent's world, loyalty was everything, and betrayal was punished by death. "He'll never believe you," Rosa said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. "Won't he?" Isabella tilted her head like a predator studying prey. "Vincent trusts me completely. He loves me. Well, he used to love me. And when I tell him through tears that I caught you hurting our baby, that I tried to stop you, but it was too late, he'll believe every word." The baby's cries grew more urgent, as if he could sense the danger surrounding him. Isabella's grip on the pillow tightened, and Rosa knew she was running out of time. In seconds, this woman was going to smother an innocent child, and there was nothing Rosa could do to stop her. Or was there? Rosa's eyes darted around the room, looking for something, anything that could help. The nursery was pristine, decorated in soft blues and whites, filled with expensive toys and furniture, but nothing that could serve as a weapon, nothing that could give her an advantage over a woman consumed by jealousy and rage. Then she remembered something Vincent had told her years ago during one of their rare conversations. He'd been drinking, unusual for him, and had spoken about the old days before he became the head of the family. "The difference between surviving and dying in this world," he'd said, "is knowing when to fight and when to run. But most importantly, it's knowing when to make noise." Knosti. That was it. Rosa's only chance was to create enough commotion to wake someone, anyone, who could intervene before it was too late. "You're right," Rosa said suddenly, her voice loud and clear. "Vincent will believe you. He always believes you, doesn't he, Isabella?" Isabella paused, confused by the sudden change in Rosa's tone and volume. "But here's what I find interesting," Rosa continued, projecting her voice even more. "You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Ever since Marco was born. Ever since you realized Vincent loved someone more than he loved you." "Shut up," Isabella hissed, but Rosa could see uncertainty creeping into her eyes. "That's why you disabled the cameras," Rosa pressed on, speaking even louder. "That's why you sent Vincent to that late meeting tonight. That's why you told him not to disturb you when he came home. You planned every detail of murdering your own child." "I said shut up!" Isabella's composure was cracking, her voice rising to match Rosa's. The baby's cries intensified, adding to the growing cacophony in the nursery. Rosa prayed someone would hear, someone would come. Someone would save this innocent child from his own mother. But Isabella recovered quickly, her training as a mob wife kicking in. She knew how to regain control of a situation, how to eliminate threats to her plans. "You know what, Rosa?" Isabella said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than her shouting. I think there's been a change of plans. She moved toward the crib with purpose, but instead of reaching for the baby, she turned to face Rosa directly. Maybe the story isn't that you hurt the baby, Isabella continued, circling Rosa like a shark. Maybe the story is that you tried to kidnap him, that you were working with Vincent's enemies, that when I caught you, you attacked me, and in the struggle, the baby was accidentally hurt. Rosa's heart hammered against her chest as she realized Isabella was no longer just planning to kill the baby. She was planning to kill them both. 2 birds, 1 stone, Isabella mused, almost to herself. The baby dies, removing Vincent's distraction, and you die, eliminating the only witness to what really happened. The pillow was still in Isabella's hand, but now Rosa noticed something else. A letter opener from the small desk in the corner. Isabella must have grabbed it while Rosa was focused on the baby. The blade caught the soft light from the nursery lamp, and Rosa understood that Isabella was prepared to make this look like a violent struggle. The grieving widow, Isabella said with a twisted smile, who fought bravely to protect her child, but couldn't save him from a treacherous employee. Vincent will comfort me through my grief. He'll hold me again. He'll love me again, because I'll be all he has left. Rosa backed toward the door, her mind racing for any possible escape. But Isabella was between her and the exit, and Rosa knew that even if she screamed now, even if someone heard, Isabella could kill both her and the baby before help arrived. The baby's cries reached a fever pitch, and Rosa realized something that chilled her to the bone. Those weren't just cries of discomfort anymore. Those were the screams of a child in pain. Isabella had already started. Rosa looked down at the baby and her blood turned to ice. Marco's tiny arm was bent at an unnatural angle. His wrist was already beginning to swell. Isabella hadn't just been threatening. She had already begun hurting him. "You broke his arm," Rosa whispered, her voice filled with horror. Isabella shrugged, as if discussing the weather. Children's bones are so fragile, so easy to snap when you apply just the right amount of pressure. The baby's screams intensified, echoing off the nursery walls. Rosa knew that sound would carry. Someone had to hear it. But the mansion was enormous, and the family quarters were isolated from where the guards patrolled. "He's in pain," Rosa said, reaching toward the crib. "Don't touch him!" Isabella snapped, raising the letter opener. "You'll only make this worse for yourself." But Rosa couldn't stand there and watch an innocent child suffer. She lunged forward, not toward Isabella, but toward the baby. If she could get to Marco, maybe she could protect him. Maybe she could find a way to signal for help. Isabella moved faster than Rosa expected. The letter opener sliced through the air, catching Rosa's shoulder. Pain shot down her arm, but she didn't stop. She wrapped her arms around the baby, pulling him against her chest as gently as she could manage. "Let go of him," Isabella demanded, but Rosa shook her head. "You'll have to kill me first. That can be arranged." The 2 women faced each other across the nursery, Rosa clutching the crying baby, Isabella gripping the weapon. Time seemed suspended, as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. That's when they heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that Rosa recognized immediately. Vincent was home early. Isabella's eyes widened with panic. This wasn't part of her plan. Vincent wasn't supposed to be here for another hour. The timeline she'd so carefully constructed was crumbling. "Put him back in the crib," Isabella hissed urgently. "Now. No. Put him back or I'll tell Vincent you attacked me, that you hurt the baby when I tried to stop you from taking him." Rosa looked down at Marco, whose cries had quieted to soft whimpers. His tiny face was red and swollen from crying, his injured arm cradled against her chest. She could feel his rapid heartbeat through his pajamas. The footsteps were getting closer. Vincent was coming up the stairs, probably drawn by the sound of his son's screaming. In seconds, he would be at the nursery door, and whatever story Isabella told would determine whether Rosa lived or died. "Rosa," Isabella's voice took on a pleading tone. You know what Vincent does to people who betray this family. You've seen the bodies. You've cleaned the blood. Do you really want to end up like them? Rosa had seen the bodies. She'd mopped floors where Vincent's enemies had bled out. She'd scrubbed walls where their brains had been splattered. She knew exactly what happened to people who crossed the Moretti family. But looking down at the injured baby in her arms, she realized something profound. Some things were worth dying for. Yes, she said quietly. I do. Isabella's face contorted with rage. You stupid woman. You could have lived. You could have walked away from this and never spoken a word. But you chose to throw your life away for a child that isn't even yours. He's innocent. He's nothing. He's a tool Vincent uses to control me, to keep me trapped in this marriage while he builds his empire. But tonight, that ends. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Vincent was almost at the nursery. Isabella had seconds to decide her next move, and Rosa could see the desperation in her eyes. Vincent, Isabella called out suddenly, her voice taking on a panicked, fearful tone that Rosa barely recognized. Vincent, help me. Rosa's gone crazy. She's trying to take the baby. The footsteps quickened. Rosa heard Vincent's voice, sharp with concern. What's happening? She attacked me, Isabella continued, her voice breaking with manufactured tears. I caught her in the nursery with Marco. I think she was trying to kidnap him. When I tried to stop her, she grabbed that letter opener and cut me. Rosa looked down and saw blood on Isabella's arm. Not from the letter opener Rosa had never touched, but from small cuts Isabella must have made on herself while Rosa was focused on the baby. Even in her panic, Isabella was thinking ahead, creating evidence to support her lies. The nursery door burst open. Vincent Moretti stood in the doorway, his dark eyes scanning the scene. His gaze moved from Isabella, tears streaming down her face and blood on her arm, to Rosa, holding his son with what looked like a weapon nearby on the floor where Isabella had dropped it. Rosa, Vincent's voice was deadly calm. Put my son down. Rosa felt her world collapsing. Everything looked exactly as Isabella had planned. A hysterical wife with visible injuries. A maid holding the baby defensively. A weapon on the floor. And Marco's cries providing the perfect soundtrack to Isabella's performance. Sir, it's not what it looks like, Rosa began, but Vincent raised his hand to silence her. I said put my son down. Rosa knew she had one chance. One moment to make Vincent see the truth before Isabella's lies became reality. But how could she prove what had really happened? How could she make him believe her over his own wife? Then she remembered something Isabella had overlooked in her careful planning. Sir, Rosa said, her voice steady despite her terror. Look at your son's arm. Vincent's eyes narrowed as he focused on the baby in Rosa's arms. For the first time, he noticed Marco's swollen wrist, the unnatural angle of his tiny forearm. What happened to him? Isabella jumped in quickly. She grabbed him so roughly when I tried to stop her. I think she might have hurt him when she was trying to get away. But Vincent was moving closer now, his trained eye examining his son's injuries. Rosa could see him calculating, thinking, trying to make the pieces fit together. Rosa, Vincent said slowly, how long have you been in this room? I came to check on Marco before going home, just like every night. When I got here, I found your wife standing over his crib. She had already hurt him. She's lying, Isabella said quickly. I heard the baby crying and came to check on him. That's when I found her here. Vincent looked between the two women, his expression unreadable. Rosa knew he was processing every detail, looking for inconsistencies, searching for the truth. In his world, the wrong decision could mean death. Isabella, Vincent said finally, show me your injuries. Isabella held up her arm, displaying the shallow cuts she'd made on herself. She came at me with that letter opener. I barely managed to get away. Vincent nodded, then turned to Rosa. And you claim my wife did this to our son? Yes, sir. I saw her break his arm with my own eyes. Vincent studied both women for a long moment. Then he did something neither of them expected. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Dr. Castelletti, I need you at the house immediately. My son has been injured. Isabella's face went pale. Vincent, what are you doing? We should call the police, not a doctor. Dr. Castelletti is a forensic pediatrician, Vincent explained calmly. He can tell us exactly how Marco was injured, the angle of force, the type of pressure applied, whether it was accidental or intentional. Rosa felt a surge of hope. Isabella had been so focused on creating her cover story that she'd forgotten about the physical evidence. A broken bone would tell its own story to the right expert. That's not necessary, Isabella said quickly. I saw what happened. Rosa grabbed him too roughly when I tried to take him from her. Then the doctor will confirm your story, Vincent replied, his eyes never leaving his wife's face. Won't he? For the first time since Rosa had known her, Isabella looked genuinely afraid. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands began to shake. Vincent, you're being ridiculous. Why would you trust a maid over your own wife? Because, Vincent said quietly, in 8 years, Rosa has never lied to me. She's never stolen from me. She's never betrayed this family's trust. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air like a blade. Rosa saw Isabella's carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. The woman who had seemed so confident, so in control, was starting to panic. What are you saying? Isabella whispered. I'm saying that Dr. Castelletti will be here in 20 minutes. And when he examines our son, we'll know exactly what happened in this room tonight. Isabella's breathing became rapid and shallow. Rosa could see her mind racing, trying to find a way out of the trap that was closing around her. You can't seriously believe I would hurt our own child, Isabella said, but her voice lacked conviction. Vincent took a step closer to his wife. 3 months ago, you told me you were thinking of hiring a new nanny because you didn't think Rosa was qualified to care for Marco. Last month, you suggested we send him to stay with your mother for a few weeks because you needed a break. 2 weeks ago, you mentioned how much easier our lives would be if we didn't have to worry about a baby. Each statement hit Isabella like a physical blow. Rosa realized Vincent had been watching, listening, remembering. He'd noticed the same changes in his wife that Rosa had seen. Those were just passing thoughts, Isabella protested. Every new mother has moments of doubt. Maybe, Vincent agreed. But most new mothers don't disable the security cameras in their child's nursery. Isabella went completely still. Rosa felt her heart stop. Vincent knew about the cameras. You knew, Isabella breathed. I've known for 2 weeks. I was waiting to see what you were planning. The admission hung between them like a death sentence. Isabella had been caught in her own web of lies, and there was no escape. Vincent, please, Isabella began, but he cut her off. 20 years I've known you. 20 years I've trusted you with my life, my secrets, my empire. And tonight, I find out you were planning to murder our son. I wasn't going to murder him, Isabella said desperately. I was just angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. You disabled security cameras. You planned Vincent's late meeting. You prepared a cover story. That's not anger, Isabella. That's premeditation. Rosa watched as the last of Isabella's composure finally shattered. The woman collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. You don't understand, Isabella cried. You stopped loving me the moment he was born. I became invisible to you. The only thing that mattered was your precious heir. Vincent's expression didn't soften. So you decided to eliminate the competition. I just wanted my husband back. I wanted the man who used to look at me like I was his entire world. By killing our child. The words echoed in the nursery like gunshots. Isabella looked up at Vincent, and Rosa saw something die in her eyes. The last hope, the final desperate plea for understanding. What happens now? Isabella whispered. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying the woman he'd been married to for 5 years. The woman who had shared his bed, his secrets, his life. The woman who had just tried to murder their son. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold as winter. Now you disappear. Isabella's face went white as bone. The word disappear, in Vincent's world, had only one meaning. People who disappeared from the Moretti Empire were never seen again. They became cautionary tales whispered in dark corners. They became lessons for anyone who thought about betraying the family. "Vincent, please." Isabella's voice broke. "I'm your wife, the mother of your child. You can't just make me disappear like some street criminal." Vincent stepped closer, and Rosa saw something in his eyes she'd never witnessed before. Not anger, not rage, something colder, something final. "You stopped being the mother of my child the moment you broke his arm," Vincent said quietly. "You stopped being my wife the moment you planned to smother him in his sleep." Isabella looked around the room desperately, as if searching for an escape that didn't exist. Her gaze landed on Rosa, still holding baby Marco, and for a split second, Rosa saw something flicker in Isabella's eyes. One last desperate idea. "Wait," Isabella said, her voice gaining strength. "You're making a mistake, Vincent. A terrible mistake." Vincent raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Rosa's been stealing from us," Isabella continued, her voice growing more confident. "For months. I have proof. Bank records. Photos of her taking jewelry from my room. I was going to tell you tomorrow, but then I caught her here tonight trying to kidnap Marco." Rosa felt her blood turn to ice. Even now, even when she'd been caught red-handed, Isabella was still spinning lies, still trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. "She broke Marco's arm when I tried to stop her," Isabella pressed on. "She's been planning this for weeks. Working with your enemies. The Castellano family probably promised her money to deliver your heir to them." Vincent listened to his wife's desperate lies without expression. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that made Rosa's heart stop. He laughed. Not a warm laugh, not an amused laugh. A cold, bitter sound that held no humor at all. "Isabella," Vincent said slowly, "do you really think I'm that stupid?" Isabella's newfound confidence evaporated instantly. "I've had people watching you for 3 weeks," Vincent continued. "Ever since you started asking questions about my will, about what would happen to my assets if something happened to Marco." Isabella's final lie crumbled like ash in the wind. Vincent's surveillance had captured everything. Her meetings with divorce lawyers, her research into inheritance laws, her cold calculation disguised as maternal love. 3 men entered the nursery silently, Vincent's most trusted soldiers. They moved with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. Isabella didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply walked between them, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor one last time. Rosa never saw Isabella again. The official story was that she'd left Vincent for another man, abandoning her family in the middle of the night. The media reported a bitter divorce. Society whispered about scandal and betrayal. But Rosa knew the truth. In Vincent's world, there was no forgiveness for those who threatened family. Dr. Castelletti arrived 20 minutes later, just as Vincent had promised. He confirmed what Rosa already knew. Marco's injuries were deliberate, precise, inflicted by someone who knew exactly how much pressure to apply. The evidence was undeniable. Rosa received a promotion that night, from maid to head of household security. Vincent's way of saying thank you without speaking the words. Marco's arm healed perfectly, and he grew up never knowing how close he'd come to death in his own nursery. Sometimes Rosa would catch Vincent staring at his son with an expression she couldn't quite read. Relief mixed with something darker. The knowledge that evil could wear a beautiful face. That betrayal could sleep in your bed for years before showing its true nature. The Moretti mansion remained the safest place in the city. But Vincent learned a lesson that night that changed everything. The greatest threats don't announce themselves at the gates. They don't come armed with weapons or wearing masks. Sometimes they come with wedding rings and lullabies, hiding daggers behind gentle smiles. And sometimes the only thing standing between innocence and evil is a maid brave enough to risk everything for what's right. That night taught everyone in the Moretti household something profound. Loyalty isn't just about following orders or keeping secrets. True loyalty means protecting the innocent, even when that protection comes at the cost of your own life. Rosa understood that. Isabella never did. The nursery was redecorated the next week. New furniture, new toys, new cameras that Vincent personally installed and monitored, but most importantly, new guards. People Vincent could trust completely. People who understood that protecting Marco meant protecting the future of everything they'd built. Years later, when Marco was old enough to ask questions about his mother, Vincent would tell him she'd left to find herself. That sometimes people aren't ready for the responsibility of family. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough truth for a child to understand. Rosa never married, never had children of her own, but she raised Marco as if he were her son, teaching him about loyalty, courage, and the difference between right and wrong. And every night, when she tucked him into bed, she remembered the woman who'd almost taken him away, the woman who'd learned too late that in Vincent Moretti's world, there was no crime worse than threatening family, and no punishment more final than disappearing into the darkness that swallowed those who crossed lines that should never be crossed. So there you have it. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones capable of the greatest betrayal. But sometimes, just sometimes, there's someone brave enough to stand in the way. Someone who understands that protecting innocence is worth any price. Even if that someone is just a maid who refused to stay silent when silence would have meant death. What do you think? Could you have done what Rosa did? Could you have risked everything to save someone else's child? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button because there are more stories like this coming your way.